the etymology of environmentalism. First, the word environment is derived from the French word environ, which means surroundings. Our surroundings includes two factors. First factor is the biotic factor, which includes the human beings, plants, animals, and microbes. The second factor is the abiotic factor, which includes the light, air, water, and soil. The origins of the environmental movement lay in the response to increasing levels of smoke pollution in the atmosphere during the Industrial Revolution. The environmentalism advocates the preservation, restoration, and improvement of the natural environment and the critical earth system elements or process such as the climate, and may be referred to a movement to control pollution or protect plants and animal diversity. And also, the environmentalism is a theory that views the environment. It is a political and social ideology that seeks to prevent the environment from degradation by human activity.
A pleasant day, everyone. I am Mary Aquino, and I will be discussing about the definition of environmentalism. But first, let's answer the question, who are the people who cares about the environment? So, the people who cares about the environment are called environmentalists. So, environmentalists are the one who has concern with or advocates the protection of the environment. So, according to Dana Lovelady, environmentalism can be described as a social movement or as an ideology focused on the welfare of the environment. Therefore, environmentalism is the study of the environment. Another definition is environmentalism seeks to protect and conserve the elements of Earth's ecosystem, including water, air, land, animals, and plants, along with the entire habitat such as rainforests, deserts, and oceans. It is also a concept dealing with environmental issues, including the management of natural resources, overpopulation, commercial logging, urbanization, and global warming. In short, environmentalism is an interest to protect the environment from the damages that caused by human activities. So next definition is environmentalism works to correct the damages as well as prevent future destruction, spawning numerous environmental groups in America and around the world. Even with a combination of legislation and improved corporate behavior, and also non-profit organizations still play a significant role in achieving environmental goals. So it only means that we, humans, should be careful on how we treat our environment. Why? Because everything that we do can affect our environment. So each and every one of us should have a concern to our environment. We should love our environment and call ourselves as one of the environmentalists, for us to have a good environment for the future. That's all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Before I introduce my topic, I would like to introduce myself. So, I'm Christine T. Baybay from BAPS T-1. So, the topic that given to me is all about the environmentalism of South Africa. But before that, did you know that the diamonds came from Africa and more than 800 languages are spoken in Africa? As time goes by, South Africa faces many problems and issues, including agricultural practice and lack of inland water. Unfortunately, the majority of Africa has trouble getting enough water for people to survive. Most of African countries have very little clean for drinking and washing. The tension between the needs of growing population and the limited supply of water is a serious for most Africa. Many countries is
Many countries in Africa do not have enough clean water, even ones that have largest rivers. African countries have the problem of increasing population from factories and contamination from animals and human waste. Dahil nga sa padami na nagagawa ng mga factory doon, padami rin ng padami ang nawawalan na originally na doon talaga nakatira. So, overpopulation and poor sanitation regulation have made life along made Africa's water sources difficult. Clean water is needed for basic health and sanitation. Totoo naman yon na lagi nating kailangan ng tubig. Lack of clean water to wash with increases the frequency of skin and eye infection. On the other hand, prominent environmental organizations have faced a number of limits, obstacles, and challenges that have prevented the formation of a strong, unified, and popular green movement. Movements on land, movements on housing, movements in service delivery, whoever have thrived in comparison. So, in a while, they tend not to self-identity as environmental movements. They should be regarded as important elements of broader progressive environmental struggle in South Africa. Alam naman natin na ang South Africa was very well cared for in the environment. Pagdating sa environment, napakasipag ng mga yan, napakaalaga ng mga yan. But in the history, the environmental movement in South Africa traces its history from the early beginnings of conservation to the rise of radicalism and activism among local ecologists. But there is conflict between white people and black people because of the large number of people who went there. The real people living there is ignored. Laging nai-ignore ang mga original na nakatira doon. But South African environmental movement has moved dramatically away from its former elitist image and made enormous strides in reaching far broader spectrum of society. The transformation process of the environmental sector has not been entirely smooth or without serious setbacks. South Africa is developing its national environmental policy through a consultative process known as the Consultative National Environment Policy. The process is designed to give all stakeholders in South Africa an opportunity to contribute to the development of a new environmental policy. Time goes by, 2010, Africa's New Growth Path called for an economy that is more inclusive and environmentally sustainable. So one of the plan's priorities is to spur environmentally friendly economic growth by expanding the creation of technology for solar, wind, and biofuels. But South Africa released the Green Economy Accord to enhance green partnership within the private sector. 2012, the government large infrastructure program centered on energy, transportation, and water. Nabigyan pansin na yung tubig, yung issue sa tubig. The Integrated Resources Plan comes emission from the energy sector and calls for almost 50% of new power installation to come from renewable resources by 2030.
Environmentalism in America and in Asia. First, environmentalism in America. So, ang napili ko ay United States. In the United States today, the organized environmental movement is represented by a wide range of organizations, sometimes called the NGOs or the non-governmental organization. These organizations exist on local, national, and even in international scales. Environmental NGOs in political views seeks to influence the environmental policies of the United States and the other governments. Next, the scope of the movement. The early conservation movement, which began in the late 19th century, included fisheries and wildlife management, water, soil, conservation, and sustainable forestry. It also includes sustainable yields of natural resources, preservation of wilderness areas, and biodiversity. Ano nga ba ang biodiversity? Biodiversity includes every species, not only rare or endangered, but every living things. It is very important to most aspects of our lives, for it gives the basic human needs. Example, food, fuel, shelter, and even medicine. The environmental justice is a movement begun in the US in 1980s and seeks to end environmental racism. It seeks to link social and ecological environmental concerns and at the same time keeping the environmentalists conscious of the dynamics of their movements, the racism, sexism, homophobia, and so on and so forth. So, nagkaroon din sila ng post-environmentalism. In 2004, with the environmental movement seemingly stalled, some environmentalists started questioning whether environmentalism was even useful for political framework. According to a controversial essay entitled The Death of Environmentalism, written by Michael Schellenberger and Ted Nordhaus in 2004, the American environmentalism has been successfully protecting the air, water, and large scale of American wilderness, but these environmentalists have stagnated as a vital force for cultural and political change. Today, environmentalism is just a special interest. Parang ginagawa na lamang nila ito para lamang sa personal nilang interest or for political purpose to show people that they care to our environment, but the truth is, it is just for their political interest. Next, environmentalism in Asia. In the Philippines, there are various environmental organizations in the Philippines who are rallying against causes of climate change, deforestation, pollution, and various of issues threatening the earth. Their work is absolutely essential as now we are living on a planet where global temperature is significantly warmer than before, or the global warming. It is a good thing that there are still some concerned people who addresses these problems, and most importantly, they exert efforts to prevent further damage, and that's exactly why they set up this kind of movements for environmentalism. There are some prominent environmental movements found in the Philippines. First, the World Wildlife Fund, and it is a worldwide environmental organization focusing on the protection of the Earth's natural resources, and this includes our forests and oceans. They are committed in preserving the biodiversity on Earth and to sustain life. It is the world's leading and most influential conservation group operating in over 100 countries and participated by 5 million people across the globe. So dito din papasok yung Earth Hour. It is an annual worldwide movement wherein lights are turned off in homes and even in businesses from 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. The next one is the Haribon Foundation. It focuses on the biodiversity conservation of the Philippines. Dito din papasok yung Road to 2020 or the Rainforest Organization and Advocates to 2020. It is a conservation movement that aims to restore the Philippines rainforest by the year 2020 or the current year. The movement intends to bring back the natural forest of the country by using the natural trees. So, gusto nilang gamitin yung mga nara or the apitong or even some natural tree species in the Philippines. The third one is the Save Philippine Sea. It focuses on the coastal and marine resources of the Philippines. So dito, they conduct workshops and execute awareness campaigns which aim to educate and encourage people to participate in conservation, and project. The fourth one is the Earth Island Institute, Philippines. It concentrates on the conservation of wetlands in the country. So dito, they build awareness about the conservation and restoration of the oceans and sea throughout the Philippines.
So hello, my topic for today is all about the ideology of environmentalism in the continent of Europe, and as well as pag-uusapan natin yung environmental issues, the environmental policies sa bawat country under this continent. So una, these are some issues of environment sa countries under this continent. Merong acid rain in Germany, which is because of the emissions of vehicles and factories that result to damage in forest and as well as damage to fish stocks in Germany. Another thing is the air pollution in United Kingdom, or the Great Smog of 1952, plus the nuclear explosion in Ukraine, or the Chernobyl nuclear explosion. And at the same time, nagkaroon din sila ng illnesses and diseases such as the pandemic influenza in United Kingdom, leishmaniasis in Germany, the dengue fever in Croatia, and chikungunya outbreak in Italy. So, basically, those are some illnesses, diseases, the problems regarding environment. Pero ano nga ba yung ginawa ng heads of state or ng government ng bawat countries under Europe? So, first thing, pollution was associated in Europe in the mid-14th century hanggang 16th century. Pero as time passed by, nakikita pa din ng heads of state ng bawat government sa bawat country na hindi nagiging efficient yung short-term policy nila. So they started to have their council in Paris, and pinag-usapan nila doon na yung bawat country under this continent nagkakaroon ng economic flanking. So they decided to build action program. Ano ba yung mga action program sa Europe? First thing, the first legal basis for environmental policy was the Single European Act of 1987. So, it is also known as the Environment Title. So, it aims to preserve the quality of life, the quality of environment, protecting the human health, and at the same time, ensuring the use of rational distribution ng goods through the natural resources. So, another action program is the Polluter Pays principle. Yung Polluter Pays principle is all about the implementation of effective remedy or giving remedy to the damaged environment, and as well as to protect other species, the habitats of the wildlife, as well as protection to water, land, and atmosphere. So, that is the Polluter Pays principle. So, another thing is, in 2001, yung European Union, they introduced the SDS or the Strategy Development. Under this SDS, pinag-uusapan yung global strategy or European strategy for promoting the growth with job opportunities sa mga tao. So, nagkakaroon ng give and take between the people in Europe and at the same time, protecting the Mother Earth. So, those are the SDS. Pero, in 2006, nagkaroon ng combination or mas malaking SDS within European countries. So, naging international level na yung SDS. And dumami yung countries na nakikisalamuha sa SDS. So, in the renewal of this 2006 SDS sa European Union, kasama na dito yung promoting the prosperity of quality of life, environmental protection, and social cohesion. So, the same as in the Philippines, meron ding SDS. And pinag-uusapan dito yung quality education, yung sanitation of clean water, poverty alleviation, and other advocacy. So, in short, SDS is all about the strategies or the advocacies in promoting good life. So, another one, pag-usapan naman natin yung implementation, enforcement, and monitoring. So, yung European councils, they had this environmental policy way back 1970s. And sabi ko nga kanina, hindi siya naging efficient, kaya mas dumami yung action program ng European Council. And it also resulted na magkaroon sila ng mas mabigat na criminal sanctions for serious offenses in terms of environment. So, the weight of your offense is equal to the weight ng punishment mo as offender. So, some serious environmental offenses are illegal emission or the discharge of substances in land, air, or water. Kasama din dito yung illegal trade in wildlife and at the same time yung illegal dumping of waste. So those are some serious environmental offenses. So another one is the European Environment Agency. So nahirapan silang i-monitor yung mga nangyayari sa bawat bansa under this continent. So they resulted to build agencies that can help them to promote the quality of environment and at the same time to give data, to give information sa bawat country about environment, about the land, the water, and the atmosphere. So another function of an European Environment Agency is that yung policymakers, ine-ensure nila na makaka-build up sila or makakagawa sila ng something efficient and something helpful sa tao and at the same time sa environment. So, those are the functions of European agency. So, in short term, it's all about strengthening the implemented environmental laws, strengthening the monitoring teams in terms of checking, collecting, managing their information sa bawat country. And lastly, yung European Environment Agency is essential for building policies, for building environmental laws in preserving a good environment. So, those are the ideology of European countries in terms of environmentalism. And I hope you learned something and keep safe. See you soon. So hello again friends, and my topic for today is all about the ideology of environmentalism under the continent of Oceania. And ano ba yung environmental issues? The same as the environmental policies implemented in different countries under this continent. So una, I will cite some examples of environmental issues such as coastal erosion or the frequent flooding in some areas, the loss of food, freshwater resources in Solomon Islands. So, kasama din dito yung devastation of wildlife in New Zealand. And kasali din yung illegal mining in Australia that resulted to deforestation. Meron ding rise in sea level due to global warming in such areas like Kiribati Islands, Tuvalu Islands, and Marshall Islands. So, nagkakaroon din ng invasive species in Antarctica, and syempre meron ding iba't ibang diseases or illnesses that came to this continent. So una, the helminth infections in Oceania, the Arboviral Infections in Fiji Islands, French Polynesia, New Caledonia, Solomon Islands, and Australia. So meron ding scabies infections. And ano ba yung mga ginawang steps ng government in responding to these environmental issues? So, alam naman nating lahat na water is the heart of Oceania. So, basically, yung means of living nila is fishing. Pero, habang dumadami yung population sa continent na Oceania, nagkakaroon din ng marine environment destruction. Kasi, nakikita nila na yung mga fishermen, ang ginagamit nilang way of fishing is dynamite fishing and cyanide fishing. So, that results to destruction of ocean. And meron ding illegal mining underwater. So, hindi nila yun makontrol. Kaya, nagkakaroon ng marine environment destruction. And another one is most natural lowland biotic communities are lost. Because, sabi ko nga kanina, frequent yung soil erosion, frequent yung flooding, and at the same time, yung rise in sea level sa bawat island. So, probably yung mga biotic communities, they tend na umalis dun sa lugar na kinalakihan nila and pumunta dun sa safe place. So, nagkakahiwa-hiwalay sila and nawawala yung bond nila as one community. So, next thing is carbon dioxide is tripled. So, one example of this carbon dioxide increased emission is yung nangyayaring bushfire sa Australia. So, dahil sa bushfires, mas maraming gas emissions yung nare-release and that resulted sa air pollution. And minsan, yun din yung rason kung bakit merong severe flooding and severe drought sa Australia. Another one is overfishing threatens the marine life in Pacific, such as illegal mining, underwater, the cold water dams increase the salinity ng tubig sa ocean. So, that resulted to the destruction of coral reefs, maraming namamatay na isda, and at the same time, soil erosion, and many islands in Oceania are damaged due to this increase in salinity effect. So, lastly, wildlife diseases. So, nagkakaroon ng wildlife diseases. Example given is the avian malaria. So, the cause of wildlife diseases is that maraming extinction, maraming endemic species na nag-a-appear sa continent ng Oceania. And example of this is the Phytophthora cinnamomi. So, this fungus greatly destroyed plant communities. And the disease also affects marine ecosystem. The Tasmanian devil, which is infectious facial cancer. So, those are some wildlife diseases in Oceania. Pero, let's go now to the implementation, the policies, kung anong ginawa ng government ng bawat countries under this continent. So, una is they established new project of protecting habitats, protecting the marine life, protecting the wildlife. So, meron silang habitats which consists of 10% terrestrial islands and 30 to 50% marine island. And the involvement of local communities are very helpful in implementing these habitats. So, another one is the control of invasive species in such areas like Antarctica. Meron din silang strategic plans in improving the quality of environment and seeing the efficient policies that can help them to control these invasive species and damaging of environment. So, meron din silang ecosystem-based approach for fisheries. So, such as meron silang zoning areas kung saan namomonitor nila yung bawat fisherman kung anong way ng catch up nila ng fishes or kung anong ginagawa nila in the ocean. And they tend to regulate the quality or the amount of fishing people or yung mga taong gumagawa ng fishery. Then, determine the biodiversity status. So, meron din silang monitoring agencies kung saan bawat country merong collection of information about specific land concern, water concern, and atmospheric concern. And lastly, they ensure that all developments affecting the environments are efficient and very helpful sa continent ng Oceania and to improve their innovation, their development, and para makita yung give and take ng environment and the man living in the Oceania. So, that's all for my report and that's all the ideology of environmentalism in Oceania. I hope you learned something from